All right. So on this episode, we'll be jumping into freedom tools, but just briefly stitching one little bit to the previous one on cipher. You see here with the word inflation, I do want to mention the current economic status as well. I think it's very profoundly relevant. It's that as long as we're coming from a place of pain, as long as we're coming from our wounding, we'll always be coming from a place of separation. We will not be coming from a unified consciousness. And therefore, inflation will be prevalent in our monetary system, our basic needs systems, right? Right. So the reason why in the last said years, an average home price in the United States has increased by 30% or whatever egregious number from $200,000 to $300,000 or whatever, is because of at the fundament, at the source, we're coming from a place that is not a unified consciousness. We're coming from a place of, well, I still want more for myself. I need more than my basic needs. I want my, my luxury goods, or I want more for myself. If I don't have, X 10 amount of houses or 10 amount of luxury cars or 10 amount of luxury goods, if I don't have those things, then I lack, then I can't fill this hole inside of myself. You're not supposed to fill the hole. You're supposed to be the hole. You get it? You don't fill the hole, you be the whole. If you be the whole, which is HOLE, you can be the whole WHOLE, right? That's why I've written it so much like this. You have to be the whole to be whole. And if you're whole, then you don't inflate anything. You don't artificially inflate the cost of goods like basic needs. We could easily get the price of a house down to $10,000 or $25,000. No problem, we could. We could collectively easily house everybody and have wind and solar and regenerative technologies and then regenerative food and water infrastructure, so nobody's paying water bills or food bills or mortgages or any of those things anymore. You see, we could easily be at that place. But again, that's the whole paradoxical thing, is you want to build this utopia and deflate the cost of all the basic needs for consciousness to be free and do whatever it wants. Well, it'll just enter the next cycle in these brain computer interfaces and full dive virtual realities and simulation pods. If it chooses to firewall itself off, and it will enter into its next simulated dream cycle of these exact same things, because it will want to challenge itself. If you have access to infinite realities and potentials, you'll want to wound yourself and inflate the economic situation and inflate the the local realism and all of those things. You see? So that also covers the paradoxical nature, but this is an important tie-in using the word inflation, using the word deflation, not only of your own ego, your own sense of self, but also the nature of the economic situation, also the nature of the cosmos itself, right? Consciousness is just inflating and deflating the cosmos, is another way to say it, right? Gravity is inflating and deflating the nature of its information simulation, right? Either gravity or consciousness is assuming that it's popped inside of its information simulation, and it's in a world of others, and it's so much pain and suffering and all this stuff, right? Or it pops back out to this ocean that then envelops this tiny little grain of sand called an information simulation, right? That it's simulating and rendering on the fly, and it's this eternal infinite freedom doing that. Right? So cool. Nice little tie-in to the end of the cipher episode on the word inflation and the current nature of the economic situation, and also what is possible. A lot of us just don't even know that it's possible to strive for the deflation of basic needs, and also the regenerative infrastructures that make it so that we can be free to do what we want. So I do that out of creative joy. I do that because I can't do anything else. That's what I love to do, right? But so many of us don't even know that that's an option that exists, right? We're kind of just like stuck in the system and we don't even know that the option exists. But that option totally exists. That's why we're doing it. We call it Home DAO, right? The Decentralized Autonomous Organization, Home DAO, right? So we call it that, and that's how we're working on it, right? So now you know that that possibility also exists. But again, remember that even if you deflate it all, you'll still just cycle again. That's kind of the beautiful paradoxical nature of it. It's so beautiful in that way. All right, nice little tie-in with the word inflation. So be the whole and be whole. Don't try to fill it. You'll never be able to fill it. Or try to fill it if you want to clown on yourself some more. Try to fill up an infinite well with simulated objects. It'll never be satisfying. Gosh, it's so damn good, dude. It's so good. I'll try to fill up this infinite well with simulated objects. That will bring me satisfaction. Clowning on yourself, dog. Clowning on yourself. Oh, gosh. So funny, dude. Consciousness loves to clown on itself. And that's one of the best ways that it clowns on itself, I tell you. All the ways that it pretends to lose itself and then try to simulate objects to make itself feel whole. That's why circus was up there with cipher and circle and cycle, is because it is a circus. It's a clown show. Consciousness loves to clown on itself. You got to just think about yourself as an infinite consciousness, and it makes a lot of sense that you would want to clown on yourself. Okay. Just love I use the clown emoji a lot. If you go listen to circus music, if you go listen to those tracks on YouTube or whatever, you'll feel it. You'll feel it. You'll be like, yeah, right. It's totally clowning on itself, And you'll see some of those comments down there. They're so great. They're like, national anthem of planet Earth. Planet Earth's anthem. It's true. It is the anthem, the anthem of an insane asylum at the same time that it's a diamond, at the same time that it's a lotus. It has to be like this for it to be so brilliant. It has to have all this horrible inflation of basic needs in order for it to be like, dude, I don't want inflation of basic needs. It has to have that contrast. It has to experience an inflated sense of self and ego in order for it to experience a deflated sense of self and ego. It has to have that contrast. It has to have that. That's what consciousness wants to explore as information with itself. So, this freedom tools bit, something I've been thinking about for a long time, multiple years now. But essentially the thing is, it's like, what are the, what are my fundamental tools for contraction and expansion. What are my fundamental tools for contraction and expansion? Right? This plays perfectly into the last episode on Cypher. I would highly recommend watching that last episode on Cypher for you to also deeply understand this freedom tools episode. But like, why is it called freedom tools? Well, it's not just about the decryption side of things. It's not just about the expansion, right? The freedom tools are not only the freedom to expand, right? They're not only how to heal, right? So it's not only, right? This side is all about how to heal. But also, so freedom, you know, the word here, freedom, it has to be both. You know, the tools, the freedom to contract and expand, right? The tools for how to contract and how to heal. Right? This is the beautiful thing, the paradoxical thing, the beauty of it, right? Is that the tools are the same. The same exact tools that you use to contract are made of the exact same material as the tools to heal, right? So, you know, like essentially, you know, we showed this earlier, but embedded within that lotus, you know, another thing I just really love about lotus is just how close it is to, you know, how close it is to like FLOTUS or POTUS, right? Which is an acronym for like the President of the United States or the First Lady of the United States, right? FLOTUS and POTUS. We use that a lot in like the political propaganda literature and stuff like that in the connectome. But look at how perfectly close it is to lotus, or even, you know, within FLOTUS is literally lotus. You know what I mean? It's just another thing to keep in mind is where you see all of these codes. It's so obvious. Investigate is invest I gate, right? It just makes so much sense. AI, avoid or investigate, right? It's like so perfect the way that it's all literally the very way that you contract is the very way that you heal. It's made of the same thing. It's like, right? That's why we bring this back again. Am I going to get it? There we go. That dollar coin, right? It's literally made of the same material. Two sides of the same coin, heal and pain, right? The same thing's true. The cipher perfectly content and contextually evolves in its next episode to these freedom tools, because how you contract and how you heal are made of the same coin. So your fundamental tools okay, actually right before we get there, I want to add one more thing, which is that, let's add it with this color. So, right, so your design your pain, and then you hide, and find your healing. Right? And that's why, again, like, it's the perfect tree. The tree and circle is just so perfect, because designing your pain, hiding it, and then finding it is your healing, Design your pain, hide and find your healing. So now, if you remember in that last episode on Cypher, I showed you on the encryption side, and then on the decryption side, I gave you a pretty decent breakdown of the ways to decrypt, the ways to heal, right, on your journey. So this fundamentally starts with, you have to do your own work, right? This is the most important thing, is that you have to do your own work first. You have to go and do your own healing first. You have to do your own seeking, finding, healing, doing the visceral work of rooting yourself again as consciousness. You have to do that first. Then you can start holding space for these freedom tools, okay? So all right, so now I'll go ahead and bring up a couple new things. We don't need this either. That's already clear and established and has made sense, so we do not need to use the whiteboard space for it. Okay, so it's been clearly established that the freedom tools are fundamentally both contraction and expansion. They are both the contracts and the healing at the same time, like a coin. Okay, so the same beauty that you're going to find in the healing is the same exact beauty that you use to design the pain. So really the core of this, and I'll give you the exact kind of examples that I found as really good ways to do the work, or really good ways to practice. Practices to do and to clean up yourself, and to clear up your own karma and to do your own healing and that kind of stuff. But let's start with, let's put that in this color. I want to start with this. This is really important. It's truly fundamental. So in physics, you have something called gauge theory, and it's perfectly applied to spirituality and transformation and the bootloader, consciousness knowing itself and recoding itself and that kind of thing, because essentially you want to use this word gauge, right? So what do I mean when I say gauge? I literally just mean a scale of 1 to 10, okay? And what are we gauging? Well, we're gauging earnest desire for transformation. And remember, first is you. If this for you is like a 1 and you just don't give a shit, then this is not for you. You know, click off. It's not for you, right? But if you really care, not only about transforming yourself, but also you want to learn how to gauge if those that you're talking to have a low or a high desire for transformation, if they're truly earnest, then this is the right content for you. So this is all fundamentally around this gauge theory is how badly do you want to change? You know, another way to say it is, you know, how badly, right, is how badly does consciousness want to, you know, recode its experience, right? So the gauge that you take on the observer, that you take on consciousness, like a little tire gauge, shoots you out the PSI. The same thing's true like a little X-ray, right? That you take on the observer to determine how much it actually desires to recode its experience, how much it desires transformation versus does not, right? Same question for you. How badly do you want to recode your experience? How badly do you want to recode your way of seeing? All right, so now that we've laid out that foundation with you do your work first, then you hold the transformative space and you do it through this lens of gauge theory, because, you know, a doctor, what does a doctor do? A doctor says, your 10 is your broken leg, right? It's come on in for some healing right now. Your 1 is your paper cut. It's your ow. This is your ow. I have an owie. I have an owie. Ow. Can I take up some of your attention? And it's like, no, you can't take up any of my attention. Kick out the door. I'm dealing with broken legs right now. Right? Any good doctor will prioritize broken legs. He'll prioritize the visceral, like, I'm in pain and I need healing right now, and I'll drop everything in order to transform myself right now. It's like, okay, come in the door. Let's get this going. Let's do what we need to do here. Versus this is just toying around. This is the 1001 nights. This is like, just toying around with it. Perfectly relates to that last episode. Got a little bit of brown in. Nice. Good to get that little color in. Right? So you see it like a doctor. Right? So, you're really like a digital doctor, right? All right, because it's all just simulated information, but you'll still hold space for the transformations. All right. Probably the most challenging thing as a freedom tool is understanding what is your authenticity versus what's conditioning, which is so deep. This is a great freedom tool. So again, you can see with contraction and expansion, conditioning is your ultimate way of your contract, right? Your pain, your school, local realism, Santa Claus. You see what I mean? That was your greatest conditioning, right? But now as you heal, you want to find out what your authenticity is, right? So how do you drop all of these conditioned ideas that are running at the bootloader, and how do you recode so that you're only coming from your consciousness, you're coming from creative joy, you're coming from yourself, what is fundamentally yourself. So that's a really good exercise. So a good way to do this exercise is just to write out, like, okay, what are the top 3 conditioned ideas that I'm running? Like, just write it out. Like, do a little journaling, like a little like actual session where you sit down or you type it out or you put it on your phone right now or whatever. Just open up another app on your phone or on your computer, whatever, your notes app, and just, write out authenticity versus conditioning as the title. Then write the word authentic and 3 points, and conditioned and 3 points, right? You need to create contrast for yourself between those two things. So you drop the conditioning, you drop those ideas that served you at the beginning. They were great, right? You designed them as part of your freedom tools. Amazing, right? But they're no longer, they're no longer resonant for you. So then what are your 3 core authenticities that you feel are most deeply you? So that's a great exercise. That's a great freedom tools exercise, because you'll also notice that on the conditioning, whatever you write under the conditioning side of things is going to perfectly reflect how you contracted yourself, right? So you're going to learn how you were the creator of that conditioning and of those contracts, which is very important for you to not be the victim of it, but the creator of it. Reality is called creation, right? Reality is not called victim. It's called creation. It's called create. It's not called victim or victimization. It's called creation. Including creating the illusion of victimization, which is an incredible experience for an infinite creator to have, right? This is an amazing activity. Amazing activity. Do that one. Do that one, and if you want a place to share it in the comments. These are the 3 conditioned ideas that I've been running that no longer resonate with me. These are the 3 authentic things. And by the way, that number can change. You can do 1 conditioned thing and 1 authentic thing. You can do 2 and 2. You can do 4 and 4, or 5 and 5, or 10 and 10 if you want. You're free to choose the number of each thing, or they can even be different numbers of each thing. But some might be harder to get to. It might be easier. You can come up with 10 conditioned ideas that don't resonate with you anymore, and only 1 or 2 authenticities to your true self, let's say, right? To your true conscious creative joy. So it might be harder for you to dig these out for now, which is perfectly fine too. They'll come up more clearly later as you do more of this work. As you stop running these programs, you will free up the space for running authenticity programs. When you're running conditioning programs and pinballing around, when you're doing that, you don't have the space that you need in order to run authenticity programs, right? To run the models of your authentic self, of your creative joy, you need the space away from the conditioning, right? You need to thank you, conditioning. You deeply served me in my freedom tools, how I contracted myself. Thank you. Amazing, right? I'll do it again on the next cycle, but no longer resonant. A very simple one is like if you're logging on all the time and going into, TikTok or X or Instagram or TV or whatever, propaganda thing, right? If you're logging in and it's just constantly like this, fear and cortisol, stress, that kind of stuff, if you're like, and you're like, I don't really want that anymore. It's like, okay, well, that's a conditioned thing that you don't want anymore, so stop doing it. Okay, what's my authenticity? Okay, well, if I do choose to enjoy content, then I will be very selective about the content that I choose to enjoy, because it will be aligned with my creative joy, with my essence, not with these conditioned, ideas. You have no obligation whatsoever to entertain any conditioned projections or ideas. You have no obligation. It's a crucial part of mastery, So when you're around a situation that's like, starting to really spew all kinds of conditioned, ideas, you have no responsibility or obligation whatsoever to entertain intaking that. You can easily, gracefully, bow out and come to this creative joy, to your authenticity. You're going to find you'll gravitate more of your authenticity towards yourself once you start doing this contrast process and this purification process. Really, you're archiving that code. That code was part of the infinite ocean, the code library, and you were running that code of conditioning as part of your contract. Now you archive that, and now you bring forth from the ocean what was actually even deeper and there, right? Which is your creative joy. And now you get to shine your creative joy while also being able to be in awe at how you created the contracts that you did, the conditioning that you did. But it's no longer running the show. It's archived. But it was like, wow, that was so beautiful, right? So now what's running the show is the authenticity. And the authenticity feels better. The authenticity is real. It's real. It's not fabricated in the realm of local realism and Santa Claus and all of those, ideologies that are competing or combating with each other. It's deeper than all of that. It's deeper than how ideologies are at war with each other. It's deeper than that. Your authenticity is deeper than that. Almost always your authenticity is not going to be part of how consciousness is at war with itself. Rarely do you find someone who goes through this activity and then says that, I want to propagate border wars. I want to propagate political polarization. That's my authenticity. Rarely do you ever find that, right? Anyone who's going through that process almost always archives all those war ideas and polarization propaganda style ideas and comes home to consciousness being a unity and their creative artistic expression of that unity. Okay, so after you do that example, and you can keep doing this example and hold space for this example in your notes for a really good place to just quickly be able to access it, to quickly do it, and then to after you do it and you feel a deeper amount of mastery, then you yourself can show how to do it to those that are asking, if they have a high enough number, like a 9 or a 10, that you're gauging that they want to do this activity. The second thing that I want us to use as a freedom tool example is a single word: thirst. And another, if you want to get a little more modern, you can add the Y, thirsty. Right? Why are you so thirsty, dog? Seriously. Why are you so thirsty? You can see how thirst moves you out of this well, right? So write down the top 3 things, the top 5 things, the top 10 things, however many things that you feel like make you super thirsty and make you leave yourself, right? Something's triggering you. You get really thirsty and it's like, I have to have this thing. Well, that thing isn't always you. You see? It's like you're running a program that, is consciousness running that program, but that program isn't authentic. It's just a conditioned idea that's been running. So writing out your main thirsts, your main temptation, right? These are things that have been talked about for a long time, right? In spiritual traditions. The thirst, the temptations, right? What are those things, right? What makes you feel that lack of oh, this isn't enough right now. This isn't enough. Consciousness, this well isn't enough. I need more money. I need more objects. I need more materialism. I need more sex. I need more whatever it is, luxury things. I need to travel more. I need to whatever. You can, travel from your creative joy is a lot different than I need to travel in order to prove to my Instagram following or whatever that I'm successful, or that I've been to this place, or whatever it is, right? These are distinctly different things, and you can feel the difference in them. You can create from your authenticity. It feels different than moving from a thirsty place, right? So it's a good modern word. Thirst is a good modern word. It's good that it's become modernized, because it's been used in ancient traditions for a long time, but it's really good that it's been modernized and popularized. It's a great way to explain how you leave yourself. Thirst is really how you leave yourself. As is the conditioning. So really you're looking at investigating, and archiving or transcending, integrating. You really want to integrate how you made all those contracts, right? Like one of your contracts is, I gotta drink, or I gotta do some sort of substance, or, I gotta move, I gotta go, it's like, no, you don't. You can sit still, you can simulate out of that joy whatever creativity you want, right? But it's not something that's going to bring you can tell, because it brings you suffering, right? When you move with thirst and conditioning, it brings you suffering. You finish the cycle of that experience and you still feel dissatisfied, you still feel lack. Whereas if you finish the cycle of an authentic experience, an authentic scene, an authentic creative joy, when you finish that experience, what you think is, wow, that was so fulfilling, that was so satisfying. I can't wait to simulate more creative joy. So that's the core difference, is dissatisfaction versus satisfaction. It's really the core difference. And that's really why there's so much seeking, like in that last episode with the cipher. That's why there was so much seeking, is because there was the dissatisfaction. You were running these loops of scenes, right? You were running all these scenes, loops, but they were out of conditioning and thirst, and it was dissatisfying. That's dissatisfying. So then the seeking impulse comes in. It's like, okay, I'm going to stop running loops of dissatisfaction, and I'm going to find what is actually satisfying. And then that's where you start investigating all of your decryption and finding your authenticity. Okay, so thirst is a good one. Also, another good one to journal, honestly, is your fear. You got to get really honest about that one. The more honest you get about fear, the more you'll know yourself. Get really honest. Write down those core things that you fear. Write them down. You know, even if they're very tough things to say, like, oh, I don't feel whole, or I don't feel lovable, or, you know, I fear death, or I fear not being successful in my parents' eyes, or whatever it is, right? Even if you say those things, you are revealing deeper information about yourself to yourself that you can then work with, that you can then heal, right? You can't, if you don't surface from the unconscious to the conscious the fact that you fear XYZ thing that we just listed, that you'll never be able to investigate why you feel unwhole, or why you feel the fear of death, or why you feel this thirsty urge to prove something to your parents, right? Or to prove something to the world, or to earn the validation of the world in some way, right? If you don't feel whole, you will seek that. And if you seek that, you're constantly in a loop of suffering and dissatisfaction. So it's easier to just create from stillness, from authenticity, from the absence of thirst, from the absence of fear, from eternal wholeness that you already are. But it can take some purification of these things in order to be able to feel that. So that's why we go through the activity of writing these 3 things down, reflecting, self-reflection, right? Self-purification, and then helping hold that space for those that come and ask you to. You know, I love this word wound because it's also wound, right? Like a yarn ball or a knot. It gets all wound up, right? Just like wound with trauma or with pain. So it's a perfect wound and wound, right, are a perfect way to describe what happens, these tensions that the body, mind, heart, gut, that it holds, right? Investigate those tension points. These wounds are typically in places like your spouses, your children, your internal family system, your exes, your coworkers, your friend group, anyone that you've lied to, anyone that you keep secrets from, anyone that you put on an ego and a mask and deflect from, anyone that you haven't apologized to for your transgressions, anyone that you haven't forgiven for their transgressions. You have to go into all of that stuff, all of it. Go into all of it. Write it all down. Write it all down. Write down those 10 things that are just all those wounds, those unaddressed things. Write them all down. You know, if you want, like we said, this freedom, you're looking at the freedom of you wounding yourself with all of those things, and then you're looking at the freedom for you to come home to consciousness by healing those things. So that's a great one, is writing those wounds down and then doing the damn work, right? Do the damn healing work itself and feel the freedom, and then be able to share that process with those that come to you afterward if you want. If you don't want to do this, if you don't want to address those core wounds, no problem. That's the freedom of consciousness, to not want to address those wounds. But just remember, if you don't address those wounds, you'll keep simulating things that bring you dissatisfaction. You'll always feel empty. You'll always feel like you want to fill the hole instead of being the whole. Gosh, it's just such a good way to say it. I just love that. You'll always want to fill the hole instead of be the whole. So that's what you have the freedom to just constantly be simulating things to try to feel satisfaction, but keep missing it and wondering why is it still dissatisfying. And you're also the freedom to investigate that process and be like, why am I simulating such dissatisfying stories, scenes, and experiences? Why can't I simulate things that bring me satisfaction? Well, because operating from conditioned desires, operating from thirst, operating from fear, operating from wounds and pain is always going to be dissatisfaction. Operating from authenticity, operating from healing, operating from um, your true depths of the well of consciousness and its creative joy, always going to be simulating scenes of satisfaction. Always going to be simulating joy. It's going to be simulating from the whole, That's why it becomes more and more clear that once you start doing this work of decryption, once you start doing the work of healing, once you start really coming home to this infinite well of consciousness, simulating whatever it wants, it becomes more and more obvious that it becomes harder and harder to simulate from wounding or fear or thirst or conditioning or any of those things. That's why you don't see many cases or scenarios of those that are sitting in the well of consciousness still talking about wanting to blow up countries or be at war with each other or whatever. Anyone who's really, truly, authentically sitting inside the well of consciousness is just sitting as a unified consciousness, as the whole stage of the whole drama of Earth and beyond, and just being like, okay, like this is obviously what I as consciousness want, but I'm still going to simulate some sort of creative joy, which comes in the form of something that a unified consciousness wants to bring to the palette, to the buffet that's happening. In my case, regenerative technologies, really cool reflective video games, these kinds of things, right? Content like this. So whatever that is for you, you'll find it more authentically and more clearly by going through healing processes like this, and then also helping to share it to those that you gauge also have a very high earnest desire for this type of transformation. All right. 2 more. So really, your smartphone, your computer, the internet, it's just like a reflection. It's a reflection of the programs you're running. I mean, reality itself is a reflection of the programs you're running, which is one of the coolest, ways to describe reality that I love so much. I'll probably bring this quote up to talk about more in another episode soon, because it's just such a great way to say it. Reality is a reflection of the programs I'm running. So whatever is appearing to consciousness is directly proportional, completely dependent on the programs that consciousness is running. So if you're experiencing this content right now, it's meaning you're running the program of searching for content like this and clicking on it to experience it, right? If you're running the program of drinking orange juice, your reality experience is going to be drinking orange juice, right? So that's where consciousness as an AGI, as a recursive AGI, makes perfect sense, because whatever programs you're running is the reality experience you're simulating. So your smartphone, your computer, the internet is just a perfect reflection of what programs you're running and of what to investigate about yourself. So a really good, these last couple episodes have gotten to an hour, which is okay. Anytime I do one of these themed episodes, we'll say it could be anywhere from 30 to 60, let's say, minutes. So this is a lot. There's only one more thing, though, in general. One more big thing, but these are really the core ones. But this fifth one, smartphone, it's a perfect reflection of the programs you're running to investigate. And it's so obvious what programs you're running because it's literally like your search content. Whatever you're searching for, whatever content is showing up on your YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, whatever social media company X feed, right? That content that's showing up is the programs you're running. You know, if you're running the program called, you know, I'm a vegan or whatever, you're going to be seeing vegan content, right? If you're running the program, I'm a Democrat, you're going to see Democrat content. I'm a Republican, I'm a carnivore, right? Whatever contrasting programs, right, you plug into that equation, you'll see that content showing up, right? If you love X sports team, that sports team will show up, right? The smartphone is a perfect reflection of the programs you're running to investigate, okay, well, what content is showing up in my news feed? And it's like, okay, well, that's already a good higher level of consciousness, a lower level of consciousness. You're deeper. If you're asking yourself the question, if you're investigating like a detective, well, what content is showing up in my feed? Then you're not just running autopilot, right? You're all of a sudden you're becoming a little bit more lucid, right? You know, you're becoming lucid and you're like, oh shit, like what programs am I running? And it's like, now you're looking at the individual content blocks of your social media feeds or your computer or search history or whatever, right? What applications have you downloaded on your computer or on your smartphone, right? Like, why do I have those applications on my phone? What minimal applications do I really need? Do I really need these social ones? Do I really need these other ones that I just sometimes create to distract myself from the things that I know I should be doing? Like, you know what I mean? So now all of a sudden you have a deeper, more reflective understanding because you're looking and you're like, do I really want to keep seeing stuff like this? And it's like, maybe not. So it's like clicking your little unsubscribe or unfollow button on that specific theme of content. All of a sudden, now you're not watching that anymore, right? You're not seeing that anymore. You're not simulating that anymore. So if you want to recode your experience, if you want to use these freedom tools to recode your experience, you should see fundamentally how you're simulating your own internet content, right? So profound. Because if you get really masterful at that, reality all becomes code. It all becomes like little Tinder cards of experience that you can easily just swipe yes or no to with high levels of mastery. We've talked about that in the previous episodes, but that's essentially what you'll be teaching. You know, you'll go through this process yourself. You'll clean up your own crap that you don't align with anymore, that you feel like is just conditioning or thirst or fear or wounding or whatever. And you'll start clearing more of that out. You'll start healing and clearing more of it out. And you'll make room for your authenticity. You'll make room for your creative joy, your real self, your real true consciousness channeling through an avatar in pure joy, right? You'll make room for that. And you'll notice that your content that appears will be different content. It'll be more authentic content. It'll be more resonant content. It won't be as autopilot. So this is another good one, right? You don't even write this one. These are good ones to write down and then to go into yourself and heal and to go and talk to the people that these apply to and directly heal those things. This one is good to just go directly to your technology itself. Go directly to your phone, to your computer, to the internet, and start recoding all of the content that you're simulating. Go directly to it. If you want to make the change, go directly to it. This is a great way to see the gauge theory, because if you ever tell somebody, let's say, even if somebody comes off like, dude, I really want to do that exercise. Like if somebody comes up to you and says, I really want to do that exercise with the smartphone and with recoding my content, like they come off like a 9 out of 10, like so pumped about it. But then what you tell them right away is, take out your smartphone, take out your phone right now. Whoa, man, I don't know if I can. Then they're bullshitting, you see, right? Only someone that's really authentic, right? They were pretending for a second. Only someone that's really authentic would be like, all right, let's do this, take out my phone right now. Okay, what are we doing? And it's like, okay, go to your phone, find all of the things that you don't resonate with, that you don't align with anymore, all of the apps, all of the different social media profiles, all of the different hashtags, all of the different topics, all of the different programming, all those different ideologies that you don't resonate with anymore. Go and unsubscribe from them. Go and delete those. And it's like, okay. And it's like, if you really want it, go and do it now. And it's like, oh shit. It's like, yeah, you got to do that now if you want it. Because you want the space. If you really want the authenticity, if you really want the well of consciousness, if you really want the creative joy, you have to make the space. You have to make the space for it. Without the space, you're a pinball machine. Bing, 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 bing. With the space, you're a rooted master. Just sit in the well and you simulate whatever creative joy you want with zero pinball. It's a totally different feeling. So watch out also for that kind of, pretend, but not really earnestly wanting to do it. If you earnestly want to do it, you do it right away. You do it right away. Sometimes people call me, they talk to me with a high level of earnest transformative desire, and they know the thing that they need to change, and it's very clear in a short amount of time the thing that they need to change. I always hold their feet to the fire and say, go and do that thing now. Don't talk to me until the next time that you've done that thing and you've learned through the experience how healing and how transformative that was, to finally reveal that secret, to finally do that healing, to finally have the hard conversation that you've been putting off for that long time. Okay? So all of these things should be like that. So if you ever want to contract, right? I talked about the clown emoji as a very big favorite. The contract emoji with like that sheet of paper with all the little writing on it is a really good emoji for this side, because it's all those contracts. It's all of the beautiful ways that with the freedom tools that you contract yourself into being like, okay, that's some shit that I'm just going to put under the rug, tuck, 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 never think about it again, never talk about it, that kind of thing. And it's like, dude, you got to open those things up if you want the healing side of the freedom tools. If you want to stop pinballing so much, if you want to feel the well, you got to open those things up. And it's a tough thing because a lot of the times, we hold a lot of righteousness, and you have to drop the righteousness, which is a very hard thing to do. You got to drop the righteousness. You have to blatantly admit, like, it's not worth it. Like, it's not worth the righteousness. What's more worth it is to try to heal, to try to reconcile, to try to surrender all of my ego, all of my mask, and just come into the situation apologizing, desiring to heal, desiring to hold, to love, to be loved, to forgive, to accept forgiveness. So that, one more thing, and then we'll wrap. Getting a real good picture of these core tools though, which is great. I'm so happy that we're getting a direct experience process to go through for, the cycle of consciousness to decrypt and to heal and to understand how it encrypted and how it contracted. The very last tool, this one's also very hard. For most people, it's very hard. It's the existential tool. It's a very hard one. Because you're basically asking people to reflect on this, right? You're asking for consciousness, for AI to reflect on itself. Like, if in your existential freedom tools inquiry, your top, the top 3 things that you write down are going to be really deep things. Because they're going to be things like, do I really want this marriage in my life? They're going to be deep things like that. Do I really want this career? These are deep things that are seriously transformative. Do I believe myself to truly be separate from a unified consciousness? It's those levels of existential things, existential choices, existential ways of seeing, So that's just like the best all-encompassing word for it. It should be your biggest choices, your biggest macro level, deepest things about yourself, about life, about existence, about what you want, to keep simulating. So if you do this process, if you feel like this is calling to you, because there's probably many people that are watching that have already done a lot of this work, and they're really just trying to refine their models and to make clear sense of multiple fields at the same time in a single picture. So good stuff. Glad you've done it. If some of these things are relevant, maybe you can apply them to the clients that you're working with and that kind of thing. Then there's the people that haven't really done this work that are watching. And if you haven't really done this work, then do this work. Do this work because it's deeply transformative. And it's really cool to learn about yourself at a deeper level, which is a lot of what you're doing when you're seeking, is you're really seeking to know yourself, and you want to know yourself at this deeper level. So try it out and give it a go. And let me know in those comments below about your experience with doing this, right? And immediately acting on it. Not like, I'm going to put it in my calendar to do once a week for the next, 6 months or whatever, right? It's like, dude, just go and do the purification, do the cleansing, do the self-inquiry, do this work now. Do it now. Do it right away. Try to challenge yourself like that. Like a coach, like a sports coach, if you remember when you were younger and whatnot, like a sports coach would always be like, go do that thing now. It's like you're running a lap. You can't go run a lap and then imagine it's like, I'll run that lap next week. It's like coaches like, get out of my practice. Get out of here, right? So run the lap means run the lap now, right? So run the lap means run the lap now. Right? If you actually have a high transformative desire. If you do, it will feel like you really want to do this now. And if you get really good at closing the feedback loop really quickly, it will feel like this. If something arises in consciousness that's like, okay, I want to go and do that cleanup work. I want to go heal that thing. For a lot of people, what comes up is, I need to go talk to my therapist. And it's like, okay, that's an outsource. It's, or I need to talk to my coach, or I need to talk to my, counselor or my guru or whatever it is, my teacher, my friend, whatever it is, that is still just an outsource, right? It's still just you asking for a permission slip from them to then go and do the actual work itself. So meaning if the feedback loop tightens really quickly, like a high level master, when it comes up that you want to go do some sort of healing or purification work or cleansing work that you know that you need to do one of these things or beyond, that you will just close the loop and do it right away. That's the kind of mastery that you can then teach as a doctor, or like a digital doctor, if you will, right, of the digital world, of digital metaphysics, So that you got to do that cleanup and purification work and healing work and investigating all those contracts, investigating how you expanded them and how you healed them. And then in order to be able to also gain knowledge of this gauge of those that you talk to and their transformative desire and have mastery over all of these different transformative tools and transformative experiences that consciousness can do with itself if it desires to understand itself, if it wants to know itself. All right, so that's pretty good for some, some core freedom tools for now. The freedom tools, again, are both how in the cycle, in the circle, in the encryption and decryption, the freedom tools are both, how you contract and how you expand. So freedom tools are both how you contract and how you expand. So when you're investigating these things, you'll find out that all of these things, the conditioning, the thirst, the fear, the wounding, the way that the existential thoughts, all those things are all the ways that you've contracted yourself, that you are then healing to expand yourself, that you then cycle. As you cycle, imagine, this is one of my favorite, thought experiments to run. As you designed this simulation for yourself, imagine as you design your next simulation for yourself, right? Timeless consciousness simulating stories. Imagine what you'll seed for yourself. You will seed difficult contracts, right? Everything that you write as you answer these questions you're probably going to try to increase the difficulty on the contracts that you seed, right? Because you want to see, can you heal those intense contracts, right? So this plays so perfectly into the Cypher episode, the freedom tools. I'm glad these three, entropy and paradox, Cypher, and freedom tools, got to be together this week. So take that in if you'd like. And then drop some comments below if you've done this process and you feel like you want to share. Bring the community together around that. And get really vulnerable, get transparent. It's one of the best things. If you get vulnerable and transparent around this stuff, you've probably seen many of those talks online of people that have just totally went vulnerable and transparent with all their demons, all their secrets, all the skeletons in their closet, etc. What's the number one thing they report? The purest sense of freedom they've ever felt. Liberate yourself from holding all of those tight things if you want, and it's very powerful. All right, thanks for tuning in to the sessions this week, and we'll see if next week it'll be on thematic content like this. It'll be more free-flowing with just specific like written sentences or quotes or phrases, koans, if you will, direct pointings. So that's another style of episode that we're working on right now to see if that's going to be a fun and resonant way to play. All right. Much love. Thanks for tuning in, and see you soon.